I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the Committee of the Whole meeting for the Chambersburg Area School District. The board did not meet in executive session tonight, and Mr. Norcross is unable to attend the meeting, and so I will be chairing the meeting tonight. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, moving to number 3, board announcements and recognition. Superintendent's report, Mr. Bigger.
I have no report at this time. I'm going to save my minutes for the 3-year budget presentation with Mrs. Stauffer. I'll have plenty to jump in and say there.
As far as the president's report's concerned, I'd like to welcome each of you to the meeting, whether you're in person or virtually. And as vice president, I'm going to take the same opportunity as all the other board members to express my thoughts as the agenda items occur. Moving to number 4, the presentation of the financial audit with Smith, Elliott, and Kearns.
Good evening. I can't tell if it's on. All right, now we should be good. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kevin Stauffer, member of the firm with SCK or Smith, Elliott, Kearns & Company. Just to clarify, like we always do, I am not related to Mrs. Stauffer, but just needed to point that out. So I'm going to go through the results of our June 30, 2025 audit presentation here with you this evening. So I'm going to take the other 120 plus pages and hopefully condense it down into a 5 to 7 minute presentation for you here this evening. And that's a summary of the audited financial statements, our management letter, and our required communications with those charged with governance. The second bullet point alludes to the unmodified audit opinion. That is the best opinion that we can issue on the financial statements. And essentially what that means is that we feel the financial statements are materially correct and can be relied upon. It is not an opinion or results on internal controls, nor is it an opinion or results of a fraud investigation. Sometimes people hear the word audit, they think that we look at every transaction. Although it may feel like it at times, we do not look at every transaction. We perform sampling to ultimately issue our opinion. As far as the single audit is concerned, that's where we look at certain federal programs. This year we did have to look at 3 federal programs as part of that single audit: Title I, Title IV, and IDEA. We did have a couple of items pop up that we're considering material weaknesses in internal control and noncompliance. I know that sounds really bad overall. Again, we had to report on them, but not too big of an issue. In regards to IDEA, which that's the special education cluster, you utilize the services of the LIU to spend those funds. Technically, under the procurement requirements, there's what's called sole source documentation over that. That form just got missed being filled out. So the IDEA still performed the services. We didn't have any question cost. There was just a form to document that there's a sole source for those services. Similarly, under Title I, anytime you have a removal of students in the elementary schools, you have to fill out what's called a withdrawal form, and there was just a couple of forms that were missing for students in the Title I program. So because of that, again, we had to report on it. No question costs, no other issues, and management on both of these items has already taken procedures and put them in place for next year, so hopefully these are not repeated. So overall, we did have to report on those, but overall not overly significant. Financially for the year, the general fund did have a decrease in fund balance of about $2.6 million, but that is after there were transfers made of about $30 million to other funds. So those transfers included to the newly established debt service fund, capital reserve fund, as well as the medical insurance fund. So you're able to fund those transfers and left with an overall slight decrease in the fund balance. Total revenues for the year in the general fund, just under $200 million. Did want to highlight one fluctuation there. The total federal expenditures were about $7 million. That's about half of what it was in previous years due to the ESSER funding. Again, as you spend those down, the ESSER funding again hasn't continued, and because of that, less federal funding during the current year. As far as the expenditures are concerned, about $171 million for the year. Not surprising, but the largest expenditures are the salaries and benefits, which make up almost 2/3 of the expenditures. And then here again, it just highlights the total transfers and again, how they increased in comparison to the previous year, with the largest being to the debt service fund. Food service fund had a slight decrease in that position, but still self-sustaining, meaning there were no transfers to the food service fund this year, which I think is a very positive note. And the medical insurance fund also had an increase in that position, but again, did require a transfer over from the general fund of about $6 million. The other two letters related to the audit are required communications letter. Had there been any significant issues in completing the audit or disagreements with management on accounting principles, we'd have to report on that letter. Happy to report there were no such issues or disagreements, so that's why we just considered our standard communications letter. And then finally, we have our management letter. The purpose of that, we have a lot of new standards that will be coming into effect over future years. Those details are included in that letter and will assist with the implementation of those. Overall, not a significant impact, but those details are included there in the management letter. And then we have some graphical analysis, which is the rest of the presentation here this evening. Those are included in the management letter and not the financial statements. So the first graph that we have is under the governmental activities, and it shows the assets, liabilities in that position. This is under the full accrual basis of accounting, so a little bit different than what you're used to seeing primarily with the general fund. It combines everything for the governmental funds and reports under the full accrual, so records capital assets and long-term debt. And the reason you're seeing the negative net position there is because of your portion of the PSERS liability. Obviously, that's a significant liability of almost $170 million, so that's why you're seeing that there as a negative net position. Turning your attention to the general fund, here you can see the revenue breakdown. You can see the slight increase in taxes, and again, that is all taxes, real estate, earned income taxes, as well as transfer taxes, and in total, they increased about 6% compared to the previous year. The other fluctuations being in the state sources, increased due to the adequacy supplement Ready to Learn grant. And again, you can see the decrease in the federal sources because of the ESSER funds being spent this year. On the next page are just some comparison graphs. So on the top is Chambersburg Area School District, in the middle are LIU schools, and the bottom are school districts of a similar size. This is 1 year behind just to offer the comparison analysis. But overall, when you look at these three graphs, they're all obviously very comparable as far as the revenue sources are concerned, with obviously the largest source being taxes, just under 60%, and state sources right around 1/3 for each of the graphs that are shown. On the next page, it turns your attention now to the expenditure side of things. So by function on the top graph, so you can see a slight increase there in the instruction and the support services. And then on the right-hand side, again, it looks a little bit odd because of the debt service fund being established. There's not debt service expenditures recorded there within the general fund. Instead, that's a transfer. The bottom graph just shows those same expenditures, breaking it down by object instead of by function. And again, here you can see the overall increases in the salaries and benefits, about 3 to 4% for each of those respectively. And the purchase property services, again, that was the spending of the ESSER funds back in 2023. And the other fluctuation being right in the middle, the other purchase services, primarily the expenses for the charter schools. And then finally, again, the reduction in the debt service fund because of the establishment of the debt service fund. On the next page, there's an expenditure side of things, similar graph, similar breakdown for Chambersburg, LIU schools, and school districts of a similar size. Yet again, not surprising, but the largest expenses are your salaries and benefits, the blue and the orange categories, anywhere between 62 and 63% for all three categories there. And again, just wanted to highlight the dark gray category at the top does include debt principal and transfers. Last year, you did make about $8 million in transfers to other funds. So that's other entities, other school districts may not have those transfers. They may have more debt service. So I just wanted to highlight that there when you're making that comparison. Two more graphs here. The first one's just a status of fund balance in the general fund. Here you can see the overall slight reduction in the fund balance in the general fund of about $2.5 million. But again, you can see considerably higher than what it was in the previous 2021 and 2022. And the final graph that we have is just a capital reserve fund balance. So this just shows the buildup in the capital reserve fund, primarily due to transfers. And that was only $2.5 million back in 2021 and has increased to about $16.7 million at the end of 2025. So in summary, again, I think a positive note to have the unmodified opinion. We did have the two items to report under the single audit, although relatively minor. And overall, a pretty positive year financially by being able to fund the transfers to the other funds. I know that was a lot of information. I hope somewhat fairly quickly for you, but I am happy to answer any questions either from the presentation or from the audit documents themselves.
Board, is there any questions, comments?
I think this is less a question for you and more a question just for maybe the administration. When we look at the expenditures per average daily membership, we're spending $2,600 less per student than the other 24 districts in our LIU. So if you do some quick math on that, multiply that by our students, that's about $25 million on the year. My question is, my assumption is that that's a mix of good and bad. The good is that we have a really talented team that's doing a lot with less. We're more efficient, is my assumption. In some respects, we're more resourceful in some ways. What do you think the most beneficial way to think about that would be? From your perspective, are there drawbacks to that big gap, or do you feel like we're on track? My assumption too is that the building projects we're about to undertake will get us much more in line with where everything else. But is that a good way to think about that, or is that 25 million? Are there other ways that you would frame that $25 million gap?
I guess I would look at it this way, Mr. Raber. When you compare us to the Lincoln Intermediate Unit schools, there's a lot of variances between the school districts. I think the better view is to look at us in terms of the comparable school districts. You know, for example, I would say, not to throw any district under the bus, but Fannett Metal, because of their size and the number of kids that they have, probably spend more per student just because of they don't have the capacity to do what
There aren't
we do.
efficiencies there.
Correct. So
Yeah,
I
that makes
think
sense.
unless you really dig down, just looking at that number in isolation might be a little misleading. That's my opinion.
Even the
Yeah.
page before, if you look at where the money is being spent, we're usually within like 1 or 2% on just about everything. So
I think there's a premise here. I'm going to jump to the adequacy gap funding. And I've failed to mention, the premise of that. When the Basic Education Commission formed, they determined a successful school's performance and how much they're spending per kid. And the reason we're getting our adequacy gap funds is because they've set a threshold of, I think it's $13,700 per kid was the original. So the state is allocating more money to schools that are spending less, which is us, to get us to that number. So the point of adequacy gap is to do exactly that without your local tax dollars being the driving force to close that gap. Make sense?
yeah, that's great.
Yep.
Well, and there's also what's referred to as economy of scale. And, the bigger you are,
Most of the
More
districts in the
economically.
LIU, where within the 25, where do we fit? Are we the third largest, the first, the second?
I think
We're near
we
the
are
top.
the largest in the IU. York City and Red Line would be the closest second one, I believe.
Okay, good. That's helpful.
The other comment I'd like to make about that is, despite the fact that other districts may be spending more, I'd like to know what that gets them.
Right.
In terms
If
of
it's not used
performance,
strategically, it's money down the drain. Right.
I don't know, yeah.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
any other questions or comments? If not, thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for your time this evening. We appreciate doing a service for the district. If you have any questions after tonight, please feel free to contact me or filter those from management. We'd be happy to help. Thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 4.02, the three-year budget plan. Ms. Stauffer? Have a seat at the table.
It's a little helpful, we can put our papers out, so. PowerPoint.
While Tammy's get the PowerPoint up, just want to remind the board, this is part of our goals superintendent and board goals to do a 3-year budget to really get thinking beyond year by year. When you do master facilities planning and you start looking in the out years, this is a better approach. I've always struggled with the 1-year budget to budget, so I'm happy we're talking 3 years. That doesn't mean we're committed to each year as presented today. These are scenarios only. Each year you can make differences and changes based on circumstances changing, but it's nice to start planning forward to understand our goals long term. So.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Bigger. So good evening. Before I get started on the actual PowerPoint, I do want to recognize Danette Nolt, who is sometimes my left and my right hand, and we were very active in doing this budget together. I like to say we had a lot of fun because we got to play in our software and do a lot of different scenarios. So this evening, as Mr. Bigger referenced, we're going to talk about a 3-year budget projection. You know, our goal in creating this is to hopefully have a sustainable and stable educational program. And I think I'm doing the slides, right, Dave? Yes. Okay, thank you. I don't. Where do I point? Oh, there we go. Oh, you got it? Okay. So for this evening, we're going to really talk about 4 different things. We're going to take a historical look at our revenues, our expenditures, and just kind of get a feel for where those things have gone over the last 5 years. We're going to talk about what we put into the assumptions in building these 2 forecasts, and we do have 2. One is what we're calling the status quo, which basically means it's kind of what we've been dealing with for the last few years. The second one is what we call the worst case scenario or the economic downturn, and as Chris likes to call it, doom and gloom. I just couldn't put that on there, but it is a little bit more pessimistic than the first forecast, I will say that. And then the final thing that we're going to speak about tonight is just looking at what those potential financing scenarios that Mr. Fry presented, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, what that impact does to the fund balance and how we can use that in our future considerations for debt service. Okay, Dave, next slide. Thank you. So, and I do have to reference, I did use LM, or Notebook LM for a few of these slides, so it did a little bit nicer than what we humans could do, so got to give reference to that. Looking at our revenue, you can see from fiscal 2020 through fiscal 2024, in terms of the local revenue, we increased almost $19 million over that 5-year period. As Mr. Stauffer referenced in his audit review, this is representative of not only real estate tax increases, but also earned income tax increase. And the majority of this, I would say, is earned income tax. We had $5.5 million of additional earned income tax over that period of time. Just want to make sure that we understand, though, we don't get to keep all $5.5 million. About 58% of that goes out to the taxpayers in terms of taxpayer relief or the homestead farmstead. So just about $3.2 million was pushed out in terms of homestead relief. 2.3 was able to be retained for operational expenditures. When we look at the state revenue, this is the thing that we just want to sit back and go, wow, because if you've been in school business for a long time like I have and Danette has, we saw very few fluctuations with our state funding. Once in a while, we might get an additional grant opportunity or something like that. But over this period of time, we had an increase of $12.2 million, and the majority of that is from our adequacy funding. And as was referenced in the audit review, we did see a lot of fluctuations with our federal dollars, and this primarily was due to ESSERs. We normally see between $4 and $5 million coming in the federal revenue. Okay, Dave, next slide. In terms of expenditures, these were the 3 big ones: salaries, benefits, and special education. So again, we're talking about the period of 2020 through 2024. You can see in salaries, we increased about $7.8 million. Benefits about 8.2, and of that 8.2, over $5.5 million was directly related to healthcare costs. These were claims that were coming in that we needed to pay. And you may recall the last couple of years we've had to do fund balance transfers out of the general fund to cover the healthcare costs. And then special education has taken a steep rise over this period of time, just under $7.2 million. Okay, next slide. So what does this all mean? Whenever we sit down and we look at this holistically, we like to take a look at what our operating revenues are compared to our operating expenditures. And did we have an income or did we have a deficit? And as you can see, they're highlighted in the yellow. These 5 years, we were able to operate at an operating income. No deficits were posted. Don't think about the the interfund transfers, because that's when things get a little bit confusing. But operating-wise, we operated with an income level, not a deficit level.
This is the AFR, right, at the end?
This is right off of the AFR. So what did that do? What did it do in terms of our fund balances? You can see there at the bottom of this slide that the assigned fund balance at the end of 24-25 was just around $36 million. That's important. That is the money that we can earmark for other expenditures that we may not know about at the time we're doing the budget. So additional special ed costs, additional health care costs. We fund the roof at the FCCTC. The change order came out of the assigned fund balance. So those things that we don't know are going to happen. And it's very important to have a healthy fund balance to kind of carry us through when the state doesn't pass a budget, as an example. The funds that are sitting in non-spendable, restricted, and committed, they're just that. The committed fund balance is really earmarked 100% for future taxpayer relief. And it is generated from the fact that we exceed our budget number in terms of earned income tax. Okay, next slide, Dave. This slide shows a history of our tax increases in the district. Over the 18-year period that Act 1 has been in place, if you weren't around in 2006, that's when Act 1 was passed, and the voters of Chambersburg School District decided they wanted to take a portion of the real estate tax and transfer it to earned income tax. And we are what is affectionately called one of the crazy 8 districts that did that. So as a result of that, in Act 1, we also had a limitation on what you could raise taxes to every year. So over the course of 18 years, the district's average was about 3.25, whereas the Act 1 average was 3.68. So we were under the average of what we could have raised taxes during that 18 period of time. And you'll see there's a lot of variances. There were a few years we did 0, we did 1s, we did 2. There were some years that after we did that, then we were raising them higher. So you get that sawtooth going on across the tax increases. Do want to point out, though, the homestead trend. If you look at the very beginning in 08, 09, the homestead amount to our homeowners was $613. We've been fortunate to be able to raise that over the last few years. During the 25-26 year, it was $1,004. This is representative of a couple different pieces. One, the state finally, about 2 years, gave us some additional gaming money. For many, many years, it was almost exactly the same number. And I mean, literally, we used to joke, we can throw a dart and we're going to hit it with a blindfold on.
Because the same number of people
Correct, yeah.
do that every year.
Yeah, but in the last 2 or 3 years, they've given us a little bit more, not a lot. But earned income tax, if you reference back, has gone up. So when that goes up, that portion of what we contribute to the homestead goes up. And then also we utilize some of the committed fund balance for that. Okay, Dave, next slide. So moving into the forecast, if you recall, we did 2 forecasts. One is the status quo. I'm not going to hit all of these because I don't want to, you all can read. Just hit the highlights here. In each of the forecasts, we assumed a 2.5% real estate tax increase each year. Doesn't mean that's what we're going to do, but as we're working through the forecast, that's what we assumed. We assumed that the assessment base was going to grow about 1%. That's our historical average that we've seen. It actually grows a little bit more than that, but because of tax appeals, it averages out to about 1%. We assumed EIT is going to grow at about $1 million each year over the 3 years. And we assumed that we were going to get adequacy funding in 26-27, 27-28, and 28-29. Our adequacy goal that was set by the Funding Commission is around $52 million. So if we get the money next year into 26-27, we'll be sitting at 15 of that $52 million. So we assumed that that's the good thing and we're going to get it. In terms of expenditures, just want to point out a couple of things. One, we took a very conservative approach to health care. As Mr. Bigger will talk about in a little bit later, we have made some significant changes to our health care plans in terms of spousal carve-out and some of these other things. We just don't know what we don't know. And so we didn't want to build that in there, and we took a conservative approach and did about a 9.5 increase each year. These forecasts also include $2 million each year, so $2 million in 26-27, another $2 million in 27-28, and another $2 million in 28-29, to build that debt service up to a level that it would need to be in order to fund the capital projects. And the budget also include the resolution that the board passed, I believe, in 23 or 24, to fund the cap reserve at about 1%. We do a round number of $1 million. It'll be a little bit more than that, but that's what we do for budgeting purposes. Okay, Dave. As we move into the worst-case scenario, or the doom and gloom, or the economic downturn, we only changed 2 variables. One, we assumed no EIT growth. If the economy starts to recess, which it will at some point, we don't know when, but it's cyclical, you will see EIT fall off first. That's what we saw during the Great Recession back in 09, 10, 11, was EIT dropped really dramatically. And so that impacts an Act 1 school district like us before it does another school district, because they don't rely so much on earned income tax. And we also assumed that the state was going to be able to meet that goal of getting us to 52 million in the next, I think it was 9 years or something like that, and that we would get adequacy only in the first year of the forecast. Next slide, Dave. Okay. So as we're building the forecast, Danette and I often talk about, well, what are the pressures? What are the expenditure pressures? And for the 3-year forecast, we really had 3. We have the salaries and benefits, which you can see on there are going to go up just around $7.5–8 million a year. And we have debt service. Now, you heard me say we added another $2 million each year. We actualized these numbers because we did issue some debt here just this past year. So each year, before we get anything else on the table, we're adding anywhere from $8.5 million to about $10.5 million of expenditures. That's each year of the forecast. Okay, next slide, Dave. So again, this is status quo. This is the more positive outlook. We are showing just slight deficits each one of those fiscal years, anywhere from $770,000 to about $2.6 million. The area that I want to focus you in on, though, is the fund balance. So with the optimistic forecast, the status quo, we would end fiscal 28-29 with just under $22 million in the assigned fund balance. That's about 9% of our expenditures, and is estimated to last us a little over 1 month, if you want to look at our total expend. Next slide, Dave. Okay, so this is economic downturn, worst case scenario, doom and gloom, and you'll see in the first fiscal year, 26-27, we're showing the exact same deficit, but then as it goes into those outer years, because we're not getting additional EIT, we're not getting additional adequacy, and we've kept the tax rate at 2.5%, those deficits start to get pretty large, to the point at the end of the 28-29 fiscal year, the assigned fund balance would be about $6.3 million, which is about 3% of our expenditures, and will last us a third of a month, or about 10 days. Not a long time, but 10 days is 10 days. Next slide, Dave. So how does this impact the borrowing, and what does it do to the fund balance? So again, last meeting, Mr. Fry presented 3 different financing scenarios just for the board to consider. Not any of those were going to be ones that might come to fruition, but these were potentials. So when Mr. Bigger and I talked, we looked at the middle option, which was to finance up to $256.5 million towards the project. And what you'll see through this chart is that the impact by the forecast, again, is really to the general fund assigned fund balance. We would still be building up debt service because we're putting that additional $2 million in there. And we are still building up the capital reserve because we're putting the 1% resolution that had been passed. Want to point out, though, that this budget goes through 28-29. Financing up to $256.5 million, we would need to continue the $2 million out through 30-31. So this is 28-29. We'd have to do 29-30, 30-31. You'd have to do another $2 million and another $2 million. The good news is that that $26 million could be used for the projects to offset debt in a year and then move that over to one of the 3 buildings. But we would still need about $13 million to fund either through cash or maybe some alternative financing method. Next slide. This may look familiar. I think it was maybe a year, maybe longer than that, did a presentation, just talked about future debt. So we have some really positive indicators for moving in the direction that we've been moving. One is absolutely the state revenue. Can't emphasize enough what the adequacy money has done for Chambersburg Area School District. It's been huge. It's been a great support. We also have had strong fund balances, which has helped us when we go out for borrowings. It helps with our credit ratings, and we've seen positive EIT. And you can see the rest of those there. I'm not going to go through all of them. On the flip side, and I don't want to say negative, it's more potential drawbacks that we have to be aware of, is the increasing healthcare costs that we've seen over the last several years. Now, again, we've taken some measures through the new contracts in terms of some carve-outs that we've done and some changes. We're hoping to see the healthcare costs kind of plateau, or if not go down, but we have not seen that yet. Increasing salary and benefit trends. The number's large. You know, we're at about $77 million in terms of salary. So when you do a 3 or 4% increase on that, it's a big number. And it doesn't sound much when you say 3 or 4%, but when you do the simple math, it's pretty large. And then the other concern or drawback is that we are heavily dependent on EIT. And EIT is heavily dependent on the economy, which we have no control over that whatsoever. And with that, next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bigger, and then we'll take any questions.
So one of the areas we haven't talked about is what we are doing to mitigate cost increases. And I try not to say the word savings. You're really avoiding cost increases. So that's usually a more accurate term. So when someone says we're going to save $1 million, they expect the budget to go down $1 million. Well, it just slows the chart line going up. But I wanted to highlight for you a bunch of examples, and I'm not going to go into each one, but some of them are very specific. The largest one, and I do want to thank our employee work groups for working with us through the negotiations and contracts, employee agreements, to really look at healthcare. When we switched to USI as our broker, we really analyzed our healthcare. And when healthcare costs started going up more than salaries, we knew we had to do something fairly aggressive. We don't want to do it. And again, I say this is the state of healthcare. It's not a Chambersburg problem. Everyone is seeing these cost increases. So they all worked with us through those contracts. And so we did carve out spouses. So the estimated dollar figure for just carving out spouses is between $1.4 million and $2.1 million. That's the estimated range. It's all dependent on the number of spouses that do not have health insurance at their current employment will determine that. But that's a really good range. And so that's less employees on our healthcare plan, that's less claims, that's reduced cost. Again, I don't like it from the human side because we don't have employees that have healthcare, they have to go somewhere else. But from the business side, it was needed to do something related to healthcare. The second one is related to a pharmacy carve-out. That's estimated at a $1.4 million savings. And these are the optimistic, if they happen, this really helps our budget overall, but we don't want to count them now. They're more of, if they happen, this can really help our budget. And most of this is for next year. We've also had some significant reductions in our legal fees. You know, we were running $300,000 or $400,000 annually. We're under $100,000 because we're solving problems. I also want to highlight doing some basic research on the consolidation efforts. And it's really hard to put a number on when you consolidate schools and build larger ones, what the actual savings are. But we do have a range from 1.2 million on the low end to 4.7 on the high end. And so I'm giving you a range because it's dependent upon the decisions we make. So if we make a decision to increase staffing for another special or class size, it's going to be on the lower number. If we make decisions on existing staffing position, it will be more in the higher number. And so we're not ready to finalize all of those decisions on the staffing and consolidation. Research will show you it's about a 10% reduction in operation costs by having higher energy efficient buildings, larger buildings, back to the economy of scale conversation, less roofs overall, because we're doing 3-story. So there are definitely long-term implications around square foot and the efficiencies of our buildings. The biggest driver, though, is when you combine small buildings into large buildings, you need less staff in general. The one variable that could go up is transportation. We don't know the answer to that. So when you do the research, there was a wonderful study out in New York. That was a landmark study around consolidating schools. And that's the one variable could offset some of your costs when you consolidate, is transportation. So we don't know the impact of transportation yet. I want to end with, this does not include any selling of property, leasing of property, and the numerous properties we are studying and hope to have that report April, May,
Probably April or May.
which is going to be a full analysis of the buildings we're considering vacating. It does not include any sale or lease of those buildings. But we're around right now a $4.2 million to $8.5 million potential net savings by all the work. That's if healthcare were to come through, pharmacy reductions are realized, the efficiencies are gained, and we see all of that. On the low end, it's 4.2. I don't want us to budget for that. I'd rather us budget not including it, but it's one number you should really consider as a relief valve. If we were not to get adequacy 2 years from now, we can rely on the analysis of this to really help us. We'll have our healthcare trends in another year. The spousal carve out and the pharmacy doesn't start till next year. So if we realize those $1, $2, and $3 million savings, and we can show you that, then we are more confident going into those out years. But I wanted to really make the point that we're just not sitting back waiting for more adequacy money, waiting for more real estate taxes. We are doing our efforts inside the district as much as we can. We've already eliminated, you know this, 3 full-time equivalent administrator positions. You know, so we're working hard internally where we need to and where we can to reduce costs. And so I wanted that message. There is a press release going out from this presentation and our efforts to reduce cost at the end of tonight's board meeting. But I wanted to stop there and just go, I haven't done any numbers for you, but I am putting some numbers on it of a range. And the range is there because we still have decisions to make. We're not even done designing the buildings yet. So we have a lot of decisions to make moving forward. But I wanted to give you a range to really wrap your head around it so you can understand. But from my experience, my research, and also the practicality of what we're doing, there will be cost savings. It's just a matter how much. That ends our presentation.
Okay, board members, questions, comments, things that you want to bring forward?
I have a minor, very minor question. Maybe I just misunderstand, but there was a slide on the Act 1 adjusted index. And when I read it, I understood that that was a limitation on what we could tax.
Correct.
But I see in some years we exceeded it, so I was kind of confused on that.
You're correct, Mr. Hayda.
Okay.
The Act 1, so there's an Act 1 index, and then there's an adjusted Act 1 index. As long as I can remember, we always had an adjusted, and that's based on the economic variables that's in the community, wealth, just different poverty level, the different factors that they take into consideration. However, there are exceptions that you can apply for if you should find that you can't live within that Act 1 index. And there were a few years, I recall, coming out of the Great Recession where we had to exceed the Act 1 index. You also can go to a voter referendum. We've never done that, but that is an option to go above the Act 1 index as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other thoughts, questions?
Clarifications as well. We threw a lot at you all at once.
I'll just point out the 3 big categories: salary, benefits, and special ed, where we're seeing big increases. In dollars, they're kind of similar increases, but as a percentage, I just did some quick math for us. So salaries are up 3.3, benefits are up 5.3%, and special ed is up 8.4% over a 5-year. That's every year, 8.4. Every year, 5.3. So
It
if
has
that's helpful.
been significant, yes.
Yeah.
Wanted to ask on, okay. Just for my clarification, the key expenditure slide increase, the second year was less of an expenditure than the first and the third year?
Yeah, good
No.
question. So, Mr. Bigger spoke a little bit about what we did with the benefits with our work groups. We've also taken some strides to kind of right-size those salaries. So the 26-27 year, you kind of see a bigger increase because we're writing that, and then it kind of flattens itself out, is why there's a decrease in the salaries.
Okay, and then the third year goes up about the same amount because that's the
Yeah.
typical increase?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question, though.
And also, I wanted to ask, and being a former health guy, theoretically speaking, is there any thought that since we're all getting in shape and taking the GLP-1s and that kind of thing, is there any thought that that could potentially reduce some of the other healthcare costs? Is there
One
any-
would hope, maybe. We did, within the two work groups that we worked with just recently, carve out weight loss drugs for the GLP-1s. Now, if you have to have a GLP-1 for diabetics or some other health condition, they're still covered. But we did see a significant rise in the usage of GLP-1s in the last couple of years. Yeah.
There is a little hope. Talk about claims this year
Yeah.
compared to last year, just from you're asking for a little hope?
Yeah, we'll give you some hope, yeah. I do give hope every once in a while,
Sure.
contrary to what.
Sure.
I want people to be healthy.
Right.
To be healthy.
Absolutely. So the last few years, about this time, we would be looking at the bills coming in for the help. We pay our claims weekly, and and the bills were quite large. I'm like, what's going on? We can't sustain this. This year, how we fund the health fund is we charge the general fund the actuarial premium rates, and we move that over to the healthcare fund. And then when the claims come in, we pay it out of the healthcare fund. In the last few years, the claims were exceeding the premiums. So far this year, we're good. I'm hopeful that we will not have to come to the board at the end of the spring and say, hey, we need some more money because something hit. Although Danette, who can be a little bit more doom and gloom than I, because she's the accountant, said, well, we are towards the end of the year, people probably hit their deductible. I'm like, oh, see, you have to bust my bubble. But we are hopeful. We're hopeful.
And I want to add, if it didn't go up 9.5% in a single year, which we've projected, that's a $2 million line item that you can then apply elsewhere for the projects in other areas. So that's a big number. When you see 9.5, that's a $2 million line item, which is equal to the bonds we're doing. So if we do have a healthier year, that's wonderful for us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just noticed on the cyber residency verifications through CLEAR, we had gotten some information this past Friday that I think there were 3 cyber students that were. Six.
I look
Okay.
at Bobby. She's all proud of the number,
Okay.
but yeah.
Well, I mean, I was really taken back by that. When I looked at it, it must have been a 6, and I was excited about that. What is the cost per student that we saved with finding that through this software?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Bobby.
Yep, she's back there. And just so you know, she won't say this, but she gets a lot of credit in the IU and across the state because they use her to ask a lot of questions too because we're using this software. So
Right.
she's on a lot of meetings sharing our success and efforts. So she gets a lot of credit for that.
So the 6 students that we recently found through our mailing out to all of our cyber students, we are still working with the cybers, so I can't put a dollar on that yet. But I'm hoping we're in the $100,000, but we'll confirm that later in a board report once we have that confirmed.
What is the cost at this point for a cyber student?
So it went down, 11,000 for regular ed and 21,500 for special ed.
And just to clarify, the process that we are going through, it was a result of what the state did this past year with the budget.
Right.
So we took on the CLEAR software before that occurred, but now we have to do a verification, and so do the cyber charters twice a year. So Bobby and Suzanne in my office sent out, what was it, Bobby, 613 letters, I believe,
Yep.
verification letters. And through the round that we had gotten through that time period, I think we had 80 returned. There were 6 that we could tell came back undeliverable, and then Bobby ran them through the CLEAR software. And 2 were then found to be homeless, so that's another situation, but we don't have to talk about that right now, so.
I appreciate you, doing this software because I'm 100,000. That's great.
Thank you. And we're using it for other things as well. So we're getting our money's worth.
Anyone else have anything to say? Well, I would just like to comment on 2 articles that I have read recently. First of all, I keep some of my PSBA articles, and there was one from back in 2023 on school budgets, and one of the quotes from that article said that good communities build good schools because good schools build good communities. And I think that is a very telling statement, and I just wanted to share that. And then my other statement comes from my good old 1934 article that I talk about. And it says, free schools cost money, and good free schools cost a great deal of money. And this was a quote from the state superintendent of public instruction back in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And I think that both of those statements are worth commenting on, because as I interact in the community, and just today at lunch, I had some classmates from my high school class comment about how glad they are that we are doing what we're doing here in Chambersburg, because they said that it really is needed. And I had a physician friend who commented about the same thing recently to me, that there are physicians that don't live in the Chambersburg School District and travel here to Chambersburg because of the issues of graduation rate and some of those kinds of things that we're working on, and I'm hopeful that we're going to see improvement on. And so I think it's very important that we are making the moves that we're doing as far as our updating and maintaining.
Good.
Yes.
I was going to say, in my family, sometimes these numbers are really big, right? So like it's hard for many of us to like comprehend what we're really talking about. But in my family, when, if we know we have a large expenditure coming our way, let's say we need a new vehicle because whatever one we have is on its last legs, we start looking for ways to like save up and put money aside, and can we pick up some overtime hours, that type of thing. Here we are, we're about to do almost $300 million worth of projects, and you're coming in and you're saying you think there's a way to make 2.5% work. That to me is amazing. Is there any part of you that thinks maybe we should be above that? Or, I mean, I think if we can pull this off, great, but it just feels the timing is interesting, given that we have this.
Yeah, I think that was my ending message is you're going to pass a budget at some point this year.
Yep.
And our projects are going to come due for bids in the fall and winter of 26, 27.
Yep.
We're not super happy about the order of the projects that are coming into bid. It doesn't suit the plan, but we're going to have them. And you're not going to have much more information than you have today in order to make those decisions. You're not going to know the governor's proposals next year.
Right.
You're not going to know, we might know who the governor is. We won't know what the proposal is by the time we're making decisions on awarding bids. So the importance and value of this 3-year budget is the best time to ask the questions that you're asking. What can we afford? Can we do the projects? What are the implications if worst case scenario or status quo happens? And so that's where we are at time and place. But yes, our goal would be to look at the history of Act 1, look at the 3.25 and say, can we do this for less than we've taxed in our history? And move forward with the projects. And the answer is yes, if. And all the ifs have been proposed. Yeah, and there's some fail-safes. There's a couple other ones, that we've hopefully shared with you to give you confidence. Yeah, but I mean,
I think that's amazing in many respects, at least from a taxpayer standpoint. So, but also just odd compared to what I would anticipate heading into large projects.
And I would agree with Mr. Bigger. Again, we are in a unique situation in the last few years, without the adequacy, without the growth of EIT and some of those other things. These are things that we hadn't seen in the past. And so you would not have had those to rely on. You would be looking at large tax increases. But because of those factors, we've been fortunate that we don't have to look at changes to the operating and the programming, which in the past that's happened because of financial constraints. But because of these other variables, we've been fortunate enough to build up fund balances, build up the cap reserve, build up the debt service fund to kind of cushion things along the way, if you will.
and I think historically the board's made really good decisions on not overextending ESSER's funds into salary and benefits.
Yep.
Like when you make those good decisions, you really help set us up for this. So it's been a continuous good decision after good decision after good decision to put us in a situation like this.
Yeah. Good work and good work. Yeah, good work here, but also good work in Harrisburg.
The thing that I was thinking about as I saw the 2.5 is that we will vote on this budget each year. So,
Right,
Correct.
right.
So,
Yeah.
in my mind, I was thinking it probably would be more than 2.5. is what I was thinking. But that doesn't mean that it has to stay at 2.5.
Correct.
I mean, we're going to see where we are, and if we have to go a tad bit higher or whatever, but that, because I'm used to a budget year by year. This 3-year, it's not in cement. We can go higher if we need to, or we see some different circumstances. So it just is something that helped me come to the realization that with the 2.5 in that budget.
When is it that we know the index for the next year?
Oh, usually it comes out sometime in the fall. I want to say it's due the end of like September. The index will probably,
What's our current year index?
I think it's 5.3. I don't really commit those numbers to memory. I think it's 5.3. Look here.
If we hit a worst-case scenario, you're saying,
It might be, now, do you know off the top of your head, 5.3 was last year,
Yeah, that was what I thought.
4.6? So it
Okay.
started to come down a little bit, but, yeah.
but the administration's feeling confident, even with 3 buildings. I mean, I know we have some deliberation to do, but you're feeling like we're
Yeah, I mean,
well-positioned. Yeah, that's great.
Confident as much as your comfort level of variables lets you be confident with your oracle.
I mean, I think it's worth pointing out, you have a doom and gloom, but you don't have the opposite.
We do not have an optimistic one, no.
Well, I mean, I don't
That's
know. I think
a
status quo
possibility
is
as well.
is as optimistic as I can get.
So there you go.
Steady growth is healthy.
Very
right?
optimistic,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah, if
fair enough.
everything were to come true and all things were pointing in the positive, yeah, we're doing really well. And you're not spending 7 years to put $2 million aside, $2 million aside. You're going to jump up 4 or 5 in a year, and maybe 2 years and you're funded. So I think that's a potential. But again, you don't want to sell a project on a potential, so you want to be as confident as you can.
Good.
Yeah, and I think, again, building in the state, additional state money, that's an optimistic forecast. That's us being optimistic that they're going to be able to pull that off again and get to that number. Yeah.
I don't think they want to go back to court.
I don't
Yeah.
think so either, Mrs. Cochran.
I want to circle back to the question you asked earlier about the spend per dollar per student. And the adequacy gap, was given to us to close the gap on what successful schools, I put that in quotes, they've determined are achieving and succeeding per student. So we were under that. And I think this is another really good decision the board makes, is that we're going to invest in a fixed cost of debt over just running it into salary and benefits and adding a whole bunch of programs. Again, that's another long-term decision you're making that will prove benefits down the road. As debt comes back down, you have more decisions to make. But if you lock yourself in escalating costs all the time, you can never get out from underneath those escalating debts. So a fixed debt cost is a good decision. It's stopping you from having to raise local real estate taxes a lot to build the buildings by using the state revenue. So it's a good decision on a conservative standpoint, too. And you can make the counter argument, it's going to put pressure on our budget on the staffing side. And I think, Sherry, at the last meeting, you mentioned that. Like, we don't want to do this and not be able to add staff if we need staff for X, Y, and Z. And I think that's the reality of the pressure that you might not feel, but that I will feel for sure. So if we were to go down the road, we do the 3 buildings, things aren't as great, well, guess what? We're going to back off on staff. So that's always the pressure, and you can't look at them separately. They're always together. And you don't want to fund buildings on the backs of the employees either. You want a nice balance of, we can afford the new buildings, we have some savings, and we can continue with our staffing needs. Special ed goes up, there's no choice. Like, we can't change that number if more students show up that have those needs.
I'm curious to know the 2.5. If we're at 2.5, let's say we were at 1.5 or 3.5. Is there any scenario where that changes the amount that the state is giving us in adequacy funding?
No.
No.
No, that's already just, that's been determined.
It's a very
and that's-
well, it's been determined based on our need, and there's a really, really, really complicated formula
yeah.
that determines based on ELL, special education, local tax effort. There's a whole bunch of
And
scenarios.
those things do fluctuate.
They do,
But this helps us to keep our local tax effort.
yes. Right.
I'm intrigued. It doesn't change, but
It could change.
if there were to be another round at some point.
Well, it could change if our demographics change.
Sure.
If we have less special needs kids, or we have less disadvantaged students, that number could be adjusted down. but I don't think it would be majorly adjusted down. It could be minorly adjusted down. When you look at the formula, again, it's a small percentage of those two descriptions I gave you. The biggest is we're at this per cost per kid, and we need to be here. So until they get us to the closer of the $13,700, I think is the number per kid, we're going to keep getting it until we get there.
And they also look at in terms of what the local effort is contributing towards that cost of student
Yeah.
versus what the state dollars are doing. So ours is more, we do more local than state, was how it was.
And just for a point of reference, I did some research on this and I talked to some representatives regarding the state budget because I have concerns looking at independent results. They're saying that during fiscal year 27-28, they're going to tap out the rainy day fund for the state. And that in and of itself is like, okay, where's the money coming from? At that point, basically what I'm understanding is, depending on leadership, if the current leadership stays in there in the governorship, most likely what I'm being told you will see is that the funding won't be rolled back. That's very unusual that they would be rolling things back, but they might go to like a flat funding, so there wouldn't be any more adjustments at that point. But as far as what it would do maybe to adequacy gap, if the current leadership stays in there, they would most likely do a massive tax increase across the state to help fund what they've already promised to do, is the way that it's being explained to me from people that are dealing with those questions in Harrisburg. So I'm not super concerned as I was initially about not having that adequacy gap because I believe the current administration is most likely going to stay in there and they will fund education because that's a priority for them. And at that point, while I may or may not agree with that at a state level, if they're going to give us the money, we certainly are going to utilize that in the best way possible. And I really think that that's going to help offset and allow us to do the 2.5%. So whether that makes you feel better or worse or indifferent, I did a little bit of research on that because I had talked to Tammy privately about my concerns with the state budget doing what it does, because that does potentially affect us. But after doing some research and having some conversations, I feel relatively confident that over this 3-year budget, that adequacy gap, provided something catastrophic doesn't happen, shouldn't have an impact. So I think we're more on good scenario, not doomsday scenario. So if that provides a little context just from the research that I did and some conversations I had.
Well, and that kind of validates the importance of the 2.5 versus a higher tax increase, because if the big state increase happens, people are going to be happy that we aren't asking for a 5% tax increase locally.
And I like the 3-year, like in our business, we do 1-3-5. We look at budgets like that. And the consistency of that, like when we decided we were going to be consolidating the schools, when we did a calendar, people had time to prepare for that. You have, a year and a half to prepare for this new calendar next year. So if people can see, okay, minimum 2.5, I can budget for that. I know that's the minimum that's coming. It makes it a little easier to adjust if it does have to go to 3 or something like that, as opposed to thinking there's a chance there wouldn't be anything, or thinking, it's going to be 7, and that's the thing that I think the consistency of that and knowing ahead of time makes it a little more manageable, kind of like what the LIU did with the schedule now. So ahead of time, okay, if we have 15 kids that are getting this is what it's going to be, not up, not down. There's no, bouncing around. So there's a little more consistency, which I think gives people a little more calm about it, because you might not like what's coming, but at least you see it coming, and you're not going to get hit with something that you weren't expecting. So I do like the idea of that 3-year, and I appreciate all the time and effort that everybody's put into it, because it's really surprising, the 2.5%. You're not wrong, Ben. I saw that, I was like, oh, okay. So, I think that if that's what it ends up being, I think that's a number people can live with. People aren't going to like it, and we know that, but you take your lumps and you go for it. But hopefully we're turning the tide here as far as what they see getting their return on investment, because maybe they felt they weren't getting that before, and so now they're seeing all of these things change, and they're seeing these benefits, and they're seeing these kids and the graduation rates and all that coming up. And so I think that that's really going to help get this community more invested in public education, because there was definitely a little bit of back and forth there for a long time. But I think the administration currently and the staff is really, really doing a good job to help bridge the gap that was there before, you know, and that started with the board before me and some of the, like Chris said, some of the really good decisions that were made about how to spend that ESSER money, because we know some districts that chose to spend it on staff, and they're very much paying for that now, unfortunately.
Well, and it
Yeah.
goes back to that commission that chose to be among the crazy eights, because with the farmstead homestead amount that we get in this district, and you compare it to any of the other Franklin County districts, it's minimal compared to what we get here as property owners. So I'm appreciative of what they did back in 2005 or whenever it was.
I would say from my view, I don't like the EKG look of the taxes, zeros, like that gives me heart palpitations. So moving forward, if we can avoid those ups and downs, I think from a steady eddy, again, that's usually a better approach. And you live within those ranges, and I think that's what we're trying to do, is just set what we can live within. Most of those ups and downs are for political gains or short-term wins, not long-term, because you see it always goes back up. I mean, you can go to any school district that has that type of volatility, it always goes back up above the index or somewhere. So that's been a good approach for us moving forward.
Any other questions or comments before we move on to number 5?
I think this is great. I mean, I think to Stephanie's point, I've had a number of people in the community say, well, I hear you're building all these buildings. Can't wait to see this tax bill. No. You're not going to, we've been planning for this for years, right? This is something that we're working on, and we can afford what we're doing. So.
Well, I think the press release is going to help to minimize some of those comments.
Yep.
So. Okay, moving to the consent agenda, the administration will provide needed information for the agenda items that are included in the consent agenda. Board members are encouraged to discuss the individual items after the administration has provided their input. Number 5.01, the Kroll fixed asset reporting comments. There's an attachment that you should have looked at. Are there any comments, Tammy or Danette or Chris?
Nope. Just a reminder, we asked the board and admin if they want to pull any out versus line item.
Actually, I was intending to
You're
give
gonna go
you.
line?
Yes,
Okay, all right.
I really feel that pulling out
Okay.
does not allow the
Thanks for the
flex-
clarity. You were going down that. Yep.
Yeah. 5.02, the use of assigned fund balance for security-related items. Anything beyond what's on the attachment, or more importantly, questions from the board about any of the items on the agenda need to be asked at the time? 3.03, pupil transportation contracts. Craig is here with us. Any comment about transportation?
I would just like to say thank you to Craig and Bobby. This is the first time that we've done an RFP for transportation in, well, as many years as I can remember. It was quite a bit of work. I do believe that this is, doing RFPs can be in the best interest of the district. We actually had one contractor, come up and shake our hand and thank us. It seemed to go much smoother than it has in the past. Maybe not up front because it's a lot of work to do, but in the long run, it seemed to go a lot smoother. So I just want to thank them.
Good. 504, budget transfer for schools of distinction planning, the math resource review, and new teacher induction program. Go ahead.
I just want to thank the directors. We sat down with Crystal, and CNI, and we looked at our budgeting for the rest of the year. Basically, our directors and our principals need to get together with their folks for the schools of distinction planning, and we didn't have time, so they're having to do it outside the school day to get their full teams together. And we hope to bring you the plans in August. Because of lack of time, we had to move it back. Our first goal was to do it in May, but we're going to be doing it in August with the board there.
Do I understand that the teacher induction is changing this year?
So we're piloting, I'd have to ask Tina, I think we had 45 folks that were not certified or emergency certified. And I worked with the LIU for about 5 different meetings on what do our emergency certified folks need. And I met, we have a pilot group of 6 individuals right now that are emergency certified, and they're working with us in the LIU, taking some classes on things that they really need support in. And it's going well. Actually, it's going so well that it was brought to all the superintendents that we're looking to have at least one day with the LIU, as we used to do many years ago, like county induction. So one is going to go back to that, and our folks still will have 2 years, but we're being systematic with the things that they need. There's 5 big areas. I'll give you a couple of the areas. One is, working with students with special needs and our ESL students, lesson planning, classroom management, communicating with parents. So, our folks that haven't been formally trained in college previously or that are emergency certified, we're giving them some of that background for them to be successful in the classroom. So thanks to the 6 who stepped up to be our pilot group, and it's going well. Actually, their next live session's in the boardroom here Thursday, I think at 4 o'clock.
Thank you. Any questions or concerns about that item? Okay, moving on to the curriculum maps, 5.05. Nothing?
I shared that that it was information. They're out on the out in the lobby here for folks to look at.
Okay, I'd encourage you to look at those curriculum maps. They're interesting to look at. 5.06, the comprehensive plan. It's also posted out there as well as on the agenda that was sent to you. Questions, comments about that?
I have a question. The last comprehensive plan we did, is it fair to assume that there was somewhere where there was some debriefing on like, hey, how did that go? We did this plan for 3 years. I think this is a requirement from the state, right? Mm-hmm. But like on the back end of that, what happens? I remember some of the goals. We want to be more data-driven, instructional leadership. We want to improve the school climate. We want to recruit and retain our staff. And I think we've made progress on all 4 of them, but do we take the time to do a bit of an analysis, or is that not really a thing that's done? Is that happening elsewhere, or is that something that could happen in the boardroom? Or I don't even know.
We do that internally, but yeah, we did make progress in all 4 of those. I have Tina right to my right. She worked on a hiring guide that was presented to all of our administration, and we now utilize that. We are more data driven, so each one of those components, we definitely feel that we achieved. Different with this new one, we really, as I explained last time, we had the CASD blueprint, and our schools of distinction in One Trojan Community really drive what we're doing, and that's, you're seeing it in our presentations, and we're presenting what we're doing through that plan really live to the board. Mrs. Luffy will be the next one up here in April with the academy presentation.
Good. The last thing I want is for it to just be a document because the state requires it. Let's let this help us make decisions and head in a better direction. So,
exactly.
Great. Cool.
Well, I appreciate that question because it gave us the opportunity to hear what you do behind the scenes that we wouldn't have otherwise known. Okay, moving on to 5.
Faye, can I say something? Sorry.
Yes.
I did want to say I was reading it, and the reading by end of 3rd grade is one of your goals for the comprehensive plan. And I love that it says that by June 30th, 2029, 90% of 3rd graders will be reading. Mm-hmm. I love that lofty goal. I absolutely support that. I think that is phenomenal. I'm excited. Mr. Raber said he got to do a walk to read. I'm trying to set one of those up. Yeah. And just a little shout out to Dr. Diller, because I know this has been your passion project for years, ma'am. So it looks like it's coming to fruition, and I hope that you're feeling encouraged about that.
Still is my passion.
Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that too. I see that is quite a bit higher than currently, but I think with Mr. Nelson getting us pumped up there last month with the presentation, is that what led to that 90%?
And he has all of his principals, like each year, they have goals set out, just like our budget is 3 years, they have goals set out 29, 30, it going up incrementally. So.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, 5.07 Memorandum of Understanding for Independent Electrical Contractors and Lackawanna College. That's the first I've heard Lackawanna College on our agenda. Tell us about that.
Well, we're going to be seeing more of these. You know, Mr. Ocker is working with Lackawanna College. Actually, is now local. I believe they're taking over the welding place out at Letterkenny, and this is a chance for some of our students to get internships. We have. When we get down to it, and it'll be another presentation, we have a lot of our local businesses are really pumped up with what we're moving towards. We probably have, in the past 3 months, about 200 commitments from local businesses for 200 of our students to do internships. So you're going to see more of these coming forward.
Good.
So.
Questions, comments? Okay, 5.08, field trips for the Children's Aid Society students. Any further information about that? Okay.
It's just funded through our Title I neglected funds for the children that are at CAS, the Children's Aid Society.
Any board comments or questions? Okay, moving to early graduation, 5.09.
I have a question. I'm just wondering about the process. Are we just, how does a student approach someone and say, oh, I met all the requirements, I want to graduate early? I would think that would be seeing all the good things that we're offering, what's happening, taking more classes. Tell me about it, because I did notice that some of the last group, there was a lot of absenteeism. Some of the grades don't look stellar, but still the student is graduating a semester early or a year early. Are we just...
Mrs. Luffy, do you want to answer that a little bit?
Yeah.
It's disappointing.
Good question.
So the students to graduate early have to fill out an application. They work with their counselors to ensure, and the counselors work with them to ensure that they have completed all of their graduation requirements per our policy. And that would include all of the credits, and then that would also include their career pathway identified by the state requirements. So that would not necessarily include attendance as part of our graduation policy. And due to the number of credits that students earn each year and the number of credits they can earn each year, a lot of students, if they earn 8 credits each year, would be able to qualify for early graduation by the end of their 11th grade year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So part of that just is you're following the policy.
Mm-hmm.
Does the administration this seems to be a repeated concern. Do you all feel like at some point we ought to just review that policy and perhaps make some tweaks to it?
So we currently are, and I believe in my April presentation, when I come to you, I will be also asking for some support in modifying the graduation requirements.
Good. Cool. I love the idea, early grad, but I share your concern.
Well, and for some students, having a diploma, even though they are not stellar students, just having a diploma makes a difference.
Right.
And so there's such a wide range of students, from those high academic students who probably should be taking some courses at a cheaper rate instead of, but it's an individual choice that they and their family make. But we have opportunities for the dual enrollment and that type of thing that some of these students that are taking early graduation to go to college, I question whether it's a wise thing, but again, it's parent choice and student choice and what we offer.
And I think you're noticing a lot more this particular year because Cassius is also experiencing the opportunity for early graduation. So whereas before Career Magnet School was on a much smaller scale, now that Cassius has joined that schedule, the opportunities are just much more significant.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, 5.10, 2 student addendums for Hoffman Homes. Everything's adequate there. Comments, questions? 5.11, commencement services. Ms. Luffy, you want to share with us when we need to be here? And the commencement is always a enjoyable time for school board members, and you have the information, so get it on your calendars. Any comments?
No, we're just looking forward to the commencement this spring, and you'll be getting your formal invitations later. So these are just kind of calendar holders right now and for your approval.
Questions, comments? Okay, that ends the consent agenda. Number 6, education and services, nothing. Number 7, finance and facilities. You have the listing of the gifts, grants, and donations, and I personally would like to, as always, say thank you to the community for all that they do. Are there any administration comments about the gifts, grants, and donations?
We have 2 individuals here this evening that donated something, so thank you to the Jordans. They're on the list, and the list generally grows throughout the month. I know the Rotary has a big donation, and we may be looking for some help on March 25th. Our community has been very generous. About 1,000 student meals have been donated through chicken and stuff, and we're going to be feeding all the children at Ben Chambers and Stevens at the end of the day for a meal to take home. So it's going to take a lot of help to do that. But thank you to the Rotary for doing that.
Yeah, the community does so much, and I know that there's an attempt being made, I think, to get a summary of what all different areas of the community do, because sometimes some people seem to get recognized, and maybe by choice, others don't. 7.02, the lease term extension for the Chambersburg Education Center. Share about the open house, or the...
It's next Wednesday, I believe, at 4, is that not right?
Yeah, 4 to 6.
4 to 6. The Downtown Engagement Center will be open for its 1-year anniversary of full operation. So feel free, I believe the Leadership Franklin County organized this as a project with one of the students or staff members who's participating in that program. They chose to do that, and so we'll have open house and go down and ask questions and see who's been going and attending and the volume and ask some questions.
And I'd encourage you as board members, if you have time, to stop down, and especially if you weren't there last year whenever it actually opened and so on.
Can I just point, I have some thoughts on this. As I visited the center, and I think the center is just, it's a beautiful building. Windows in the offices, it's lovely. But then I looked at it over 3 years, we're going to pay $187,000. And then I checked to see if that was grant money or is that taxpayer funded. But it's taxpayer funded, it's $187,000. It's wonderful, but yet at the same time, I think is a big expense. There's lots of social services available to parents, especially downtown. I really believe the staff does a phenomenal job there. I know that the secretary is bilingual, and that's great for the Spanish-speaking students. I think that was a real plus when the district hired someone that was bilingual. For years, enrollment was done in this building, and there's actually a desk out there for enrollment. So I say to myself, okay, that's a teacher and a half, that $187,000. Should we have that teacher be teaching kids, or should we have an engagement center? Is there a better place for an engagement center? For example, in the next couple of years when we consolidate, we're going to have a building. Can we limp along for 3 years without paying the $187,000 and restructure it? It's not about the staff. Like I said, I think they do a wonderful job. But I've also noticed too that when you have more space, sometimes people spread out more. And also, I was thinking about the Armory. When we renovated this building, there was tons of space over at the Armory. It's not fancy like downtown. It's not, the offices are, just not as nice. But would it serve the same purpose to be able to get those families? And I even thought about you, Ben. You have a wonderful facility downtown, and we wouldn't be paying $180,000 for it. Is there a better way? Yeah, maybe I should be asking you if you want to rent out down there. But anyway, from your nonprofit. But I just thought, and I know that we're, you're having this open house, and I know that we have, and does Keystone have any space? Or, Keystone now has what was back down there at Southgate. Don't they have a really nice facility now? So, kids can get their immunizations. I mean, I think we will have the space for something like this, like Andrew Buchanan when that would close. But, paying over $5,200 or $5,300 a month, I'm having a hard time with it. So that's just my thoughts for when we go to voting. I'm struggling.
Any other comments about this item?
Are you still seeing the same amount of people getting services? They may be different services that you were when we first opened it, or has there been a decrease, or the utilization of it? I mean, return on investment is kind of what I'm looking at. I don't know you can quantify that, but maybe.
Actually, they keep track of every visit,
Right.
and I can put that in a Friday board folder. I'd have to find it in my
That
Google
would be
Drive.
wonderful.
But they keep track of every visit,
Why they're there, for what
why they're
reasons.
there, and, yep.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful. The situation is, though, enrollment was done here, and it was done fine using this building. So when they're there for enrollment, that is not something that has been added onto. I mean, it's nice that it's down there perhaps, but it does work out here as well. So be careful that we're not having enrollment numbers touched. And then why are they coming down there? I know that they have clothing in there now, but there's other places that people can get clothing. It's like the school system's supposed to be everything for everybody all the time sometimes, and I'm just like, $187,000. But I think, Stephanie, that's good to get the numbers, because I don't know how much we've really analyzed it since we've opened it. Again, it has nothing to do with staff. It just has to do with the facility. And is there a cheaper place, or can we make it? Can we limp along for 3 years and then move them into, say, Andrew Buchanan, a school that's closing? It's just some thoughts I had.
Okay.
I'm curious to know, are there specific questions that the administration could answer in 2 weeks' time that could help bring clarity to this issue? I don't know how many other people are struggling with.
I would go next Wednesday. Go ask the people who do it every day. That's the best information you're going to get, is from the people that live there every day.
Would it help to have even a report back on that at our next meeting?
Actually, I have,
To understand the value of,
yeah, we have Andrea Mills actually going to be coming to the board. She's on Mr. Bigger's list to present to the board about, the data. I did pull it up. So far this year, there's 631 visitors since August, and 322 of them were walk-ins, 309 were by appointment, and they have it broken down, what languages they speak. 201 speak English, 261 Spanish, 156 Haitian. But they have broken down by month and total.
Were they there for enrollment, though?
I'd have to look. They have a tab that shows each individual student and what they were there for.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to know because,
Yeah.
I mean, you can set up an enrollment center and have an interpreter there too, you know, I mean, it's just,
Yeah, I agree that when we have Andrew Buchanan, that's the perfect place for some of these services and so on, but until then,
187,000,
Yeah.
you're willing to spend it.
I mean, yeah, what would it cost for comparable office space elsewhere? Is there, you know, you said, well, we used to have it here, but is there actually space to do what they're doing there? Here, I don't think so. So are there other questions that we want the administration to bring in 2 weeks' time for your sake?
When do you have to know by? When's the lease up with FCADC? That is still who holds that, correct?
Yeah, it is. It's through June 30th, so we
Okay.
could delay this a month. We're not on urgent crisis on time frame, but yeah, we could go another month or so. But if we're going to make a different decision, then we need some lead time.
Oh, for sure.
Do you suggest going as a board member and visiting there? I mean, I've
Yeah,
been.
go in the open house if you can on Wednesday at 4
Well,
o'clock.
the open house is,
But, I mean,
that's food and, you know.
yeah, I mean, it's,
Different people. I think it's good to see how it operates.
Like on a non-open house day, yeah.
are you suggesting that the lease be less than 3 years possibly? Is that?
Well, I don't know. Are there other possibilities?
Well, it would take time to explore other possibilities, it would seem to me. So I don't know what the, possibility of a shorter lease so that other possibilities.
You think
can be
Mike would do
explored.
that? I'm sorry, do you think FCADC would do that?
A one-year
Like a
lease?
1 year?
Sure,
Just
sure.
so we have the opportunity?
Yep.
Because I don't know that's a decision you want to make without all the information in 2 months.
What space is at the Armory? I mean, there were offices over there
Sure.
because I was in them. They're not as nice as down there, but they're not $5,000 a month either. We already own
Yep,
those.
there'd be space at the Armory. Yep.
And it would still be a non-school building, which was one of the
Yep.
reasons why they promoted the idea of that building was that some parents and people prefer not to have to come to a school.
Sure. Well, and I think the Armory's more non-intimidating than finding the parking and figuring out and going into this fancy building, which is very nice. It's very nice.
I prefer the downtown location, but I agree that getting in there initially,
It's rough.
you can't enter through the street side, so.
Well, you got the
Yeah.
Armory, which would be free, and you got if we do it for a year, it's $62,000.
So we'll bring the data, we'll have the open house, and then we'll collect information, and you guys can make a decision at the next meeting. Or we could table it and wait till April. That's an option as well.
Yeah, and as far as downtown is concerned, there's people who downtown's not as convenient as somewhere else is.
You gotta find parking.
Yeah.
What is the
Yeah.
outreach? What is the outreach center that Keystone Health has down there? What do they do there? I mean, don't they have?
The Navigator, that's.
Yeah, the Navigator. What do they do there?
So
Do
they
does anybody
mostly
know?
do, go ahead.
The Keystone Navigator, they provide a navigator there that helps us get our students into our schools quicker. We were having delays with our students because they would register and then they wouldn't call or they wouldn't go to get their physicals or their vaccinations. And this has really helped us quite a bit getting our kids in right away within a day or two to our schools where it may have been a week or two or even longer prior.
But won't they continue, even if we weren't downtown, won't they continue having their Navigator place?
I think it's working so well for us and for them that
Yeah.
wherever we would have the CEC, that they would, I would hope that they would.
Join up.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
Moving to 8, policy and legislation. The policies with no changes are listed there for you. Any discussion from administration on the student recruitment policy? No change. And then,
The next one we do get to discuss.
okay, good.
So we have a new policy for staff members regarding electronic communications, and then we have the student one that we wanted to bring up. I think Mike Haydock brought a topic up early in the fall, and we had just changed it. We said, hey, let's bring this up later in the spring. We get close to our annual review. And so we have two policies. But the paramount one is to talk about the student one. And I know Mr. Brenneis magically walked out now. No, hopefully it wasn't for that reason. I don't think it is. And I'm not going to speak for Deb Luffy or Mr. Brenneis, but I do believe that there is an appetite to be more restrictive with the cell phones in the high school. And so the language is reflected in the change for the student electronic device, which essentially follows what the middle school currently does, which means it's in your backpack, in your locker, and that's it. That's the significant change that you will see in the policy, that there is administrative support for if the board wants to go down that path. So that is what you would see in that policy as a change. Right now, there's the green and red zone, which you can hallway, cafeteria, you can have your phone in the classroom and not use it in the classroom, but in the hallway and cafeteria, you can use it. We want to take that step back and put them in the lockers. I believe that's the solution, lockers? Yeah. Yeah, so basically bell to bell, beginning of the day to end of day is our recommendation at the policy level right now.
Do you feel there'll be enforcement of that?
That's a loaded question.
Well,
No, it's good, it's good.
having any policy that is not enforced negates all other policies, in my
Right.
opinion. Because if you have a policy and you don't enforce that policy, well, the next policy,
It's just the policy.
yeah.
The administration is ready for a stronger stance.
Good.
So, Mr. Brenneis, I actually said, I was like, you're going to miss the cell phone, you know? And he's like, I'll catch up tomorrow. But no, he actually feels very strongly
Oh,
that
I
like
do
he's ready
too,
for
but-
this.
Okay. Any further discussion either from administration or from the board?
Well, it seems to me like you're just getting ahead of what's being proposed and going through the Senate now, because it's going to enact in 27, 28. So you're already, instead of getting your hand forced then,
Right.
you're getting ahead of the curve, correct?
And also, I think I said this on the radio or other places, it took us 18 years to get this problem. You spend a little time talking about it, getting there, you communicate, it's not as abrupt. So we started talking about this last year, you've brought it up. There's now more of a movement of other people talking about it. It's more of an appropriate time. I think you called it draconian measures, I believe, Mike Haydock last time, if I remember correctly. You remember that meeting?
I remember that far back.
Okay.
So I do have a comment about policy 223, and I have several comments on the electronic devices policy. So on 223, the only thing I would ask is, and I don't know if it makes any sense, but I see a lot of these e-scooters out that are not e-bikes, and but they're around, and I don't know if kids in the middle school or elementary schools are using, but I thought maybe you could add e-scooters as well, but it's no big deal.
It's a good one.
But 237, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this policy, and I like the revisions that are made. But any policy like that's just been discussed that doesn't, isn't enforceable, it's dead on arrival, so, but I'd like to see the following happen. One is, there's a policy 235, it's student rights and responsibility. Currently, the policy addresses dress code, which is another policy that is, it's just there.
Absolutely.
Warns against obscene language. Okay, I like that. Shouldn't be saying that stuff in school. But it doesn't mention anything about cell phone usage. So I think that's an opportunity to fix that. Number 2, the student handbook. Any discussion about electronic devices is buried behind issues such as, and these are all important issues, asbestos, homeless assistant, pest management. They're important, but they are really exceptions. And I would say that cell phone usage is the rule rather than the exception, at least what I see. And the handbook policy, the handbook references policy 237, but the wording is really, really confusing and kind of just needs to be fixed. Okay, number 3. I like the, however you decide to secure the devices is great. Logistics, your operation is going to work that out. But what I want to know is how it's to be enforced. Coincidentally, I subbed in a classroom just yesterday at the high school. I attempted to enforce the policy. And it was a challenge, okay? I had to tell the same student 3 times to put the phone away.
Did you pull out the policy and read it to them?
No, but I kind of could have said it by memory. But anyways, but after I got to the 3rd time, I sensed it was becoming confrontational. And I made it this far in life knowing how to de-escalate situations. And it didn't need to be about me, my ego against the students, you know, and all that stuff. So, but I'll tell you what, after that confrontation, the energy in the classroom was totally negative. I felt it, and I'm sure it resonated with every student. And then I'm thinking, if a teacher has to go through that with every class, this is how we're going to start our class. Okay, now put your phone away. And then all of a sudden, now let's get back to teaching. That just really doesn't work. And so I'd like to know how it's going to be enforced. And I'd like to know what all the teachers are thinking about how it's enforced. One other thing I want to mention about a change. There's a paragraph, in the policy. It says under the purpose, you read, it says the board has determined that the presence of mobile device, blah blah blah, has the potential to distract students, I would say, and teachers from their educational mission. Students have a mission to learn, the teachers have a mission to teach, so they should be on equal ground there.
You were going to send me an email with some of this, right?
I'll give Tammy this paper.
You're supposed to be taking copious notes.
No, like I said, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and here I am. So the last thing I would say is it'd be a wonderful opportunity that when the 9th grade cohort from the middle school comes here to the high school, that over 4 years we track their academic performance to determine, does this really work? Is there an increase in academic performance? Is there a reduction in behavioral issues, emotional issues, all that stuff? Yeah. So I think it's a great laboratory to be able to look at that kind of data. So, and I'm done. Thank you very much. There you go.
Other comments? If not, moving on to 9, safety. Oh, yes, go ahead.
I have one about the employee
Oh, okay.
one. I'm curious to know, the policy says that, basically says employees
354.
employees can't use their phones to take photos unless it's approved by the principal.
Right.
How's that actually working in the buildings? Because I know teachers are taking photos at times because I received them on Class Dojo. They're getting approval for every photo, or like
This is
how's
a brand new policy. Brand new. This is a brand new policy. This is not.
Okay, so how will that work in the future? Have we had principals and teachers review this policy yet?
So we actually, when we were writing this policy, a little bit later in the policy, it does talk about approved apps that we know our teachers have on their phones, Class Dojo, and even their email. And we do address it later in the policy that use of the device, for example, Dojo, is acceptable because it's an approved CASD resource. And our teachers communicate, I believe, more now with parents than ever before because of that app. So that was a great question, but that's the example, and we actually spent a good bit of time reviewing that because of that very question that you just asked.
Have at least a few of the principals and teachers given some feedback on this, or?
We have not. This policy is more of a position of protection and also prevention. We do not want text messaging, Snapchat, which is where we have seen in the past communications where basically saying, you're done with that. And if you violate the policy, there are consequences to that. But the encouragement to use the software that's approved or the, as Kurt's saying, the application is where we want to channel you to. We didn't have a policy to that effect before, which puts us at a pretty high risk. There are some states saying absolutely no communication at all on any personal device across the board.
Sure.
So we don't want to go that far just yet, but.
I think the dojo stuff is positive overall.
Yes,
So,
yes.
yeah. Okay,
Again, any other questions or comments?
thanks.
Okay, moving to 10, there's nothing under 9, safety and security, 10, privilege of the floor, and I don't have the list.
Nobody went to get the lists. It's a very packed house, so. You can probably ask who's here.
Okay, who signed up? Okay.
I got an alibi though on, you said, yeah, I'm interested also on how the students feel about the cell phone policy being changed. I was hoping Amir would be here today, or?
Could you poll them
Okay.
before we vote?
I know how they
No,
feel.
I'm just kidding.
Don't even have to ask.
Okay, Ms. Jordan.
In regards to the engagement center, maybe to help Dr. Diller a little bit, I've been in it. It is beautiful. I think we should keep it. And I understand the cost. If you find something for $2,500, I'm going to say, for my tax bill or somebody else's tax bill, what does that come out to when it comes to assessment?
Sure.
So let me let you think about that, and I can go into email. I'm going to present some numbers to you, and they're your numbers. And it is the worst-case scenario, but it really isn't. My husband said, why are you going to do this? When we build the buildings, okay, the schools, we're going to have land to sell, and we may have state monies. My numbers tonight don't reflect that, so let me go. The existing annual debt service is $11.6 million. The proposed annual debt service involving the new school could be $32 million. That's according to your amortization chart. If you take the assessment of a homeowner who's obligated to pay $2,000 annually to the school district based on $32 million in the annual debt service, this homeowner will pay 90 cents a day towards the encumbered debt service. If you take the assessment of a homeowner who's obligated to pay $4,000 annually to the school district based on $32 million in annual debt service, which is me, this homeowner will pay $1.80 a day towards the encumbered debt service. If you take the assessment of a homeowner who is obligated to pay $6,000 annually to the school district based on $32 million in the annual debt service, the homeowner will pay $3.60 a day towards the encumbered debt service, and so on down the line. The largest ratepayers, which are our businesses, will shoulder the biggest part of this debt. If these businesses don't complain, none of us should complain investing in a child's future. $1.80 a day over 7 days' time comes to $12.60 a week. As of right now, and this is for everyone here, our daily expenses far outpace such a debt. Look at the price of gasoline right now. Debt is a fixed cost unless one finances it in order to lower it, which you could do, because I did it personally in my own life. Vendor costs go up. This is to you, Superintendent Bigger. Safety packs are paid by the taxpayer. PTOs fundraise for teachers and students, and you know what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Mrs. Doherty.
And I just want to shout out to the students who, in closing, kudos to the Cassius students who took a stand against ICE. These students realize
Thank you,
that
Mrs.
ICE,
Doherty. Your time is up.
these students realize the ICE isn't needed in our quiet neighborhood streets. Thank you.
Okay, information is next on the, oh, okay, sorry.
So I didn't plan on speaking tonight, but I heard Mr. Hayduck make a great point earlier about students' perspective on this new phone policy. I'm Parker Christoffel, by the way, for who doesn't know. And so I'm going to represent the students tonight. I'm going to speak my own personal views and also other students. As an overall student body, the students probably won't receive this policy well. And I feel like students do have a knowledge, especially with our health classes and education from the school district, about how phones aren't so great for a lot of students' mental health. They aren't great for their distractions in the classroom. Students they realize that, but they put it aside compared to pulling out their phone and scrolling on TikTok and getting that amusement. They don't see it as that big of an impact. I see the impact. I think this policy is going to be for the greater benefit of the students. Will it suck for me personally in the beginning? Yes, I do pull out my phone and I scroll. I'm not the best with it, and I feel like this will help students as well. Benefit from that. It'll help our education, but I feel like definitely the total student body's perspective on it, it's definitely not going to be great at first, 100%. And it probably won't be for a long time, if not at all. But I feel like it's a good idea, and students will just have to grow to understand why you guys are making this decision or possibly making this decision, and how it will. And I feel like once we get older, we will definitely realize how this is definitely going to benefit us and our education and the building as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Wonderful.
Okay. Moving to information, the district enrollment summary and the AP texts that are in review are listed there. Lastly, the new business discussion only. Are there any topics that any board members want to bring up for discussion for future action?
Well, this would.
Oh, sorry, Sherry, please go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Do you want to do rock, paper, scissors? Or?
You go. You go.
I was just wondering if it would be possible for us, and it doesn't have to be a presentation. I'm just curious how attendance is doing, how truancy rates are doing, how we're looking at, and what things we're enacting if there are issues. I only ask that because I've been seeing presentations in some of the other organizations that I'm involved with, and I have friends on other school boards, and that seems to be a relatively huge problem in a lot of other school districts. And I know it was here, and I know we were trying to do things to work towards changing that. And not that it needs to be something that is done in the next couple of weeks, but I just would like to get it on the radar, like even in a Friday folder with some information instead of a presentation. It's just something that I was curious about, and maybe some of the other board members would be too, because I know we had talked about it previously.
On the website of each of the elementary schools, attendance is listed with a percentage. As a matter of fact, the percentage is 93 to 94%, except for Scotland, which is 87%, if my memory serves me correctly. But it is on the website if you go to the individual schools.
For high school and middle?
No, it is not consistently. There are some, I think maybe middle school is, but high school I know is, I'm almost positive is not. I just looked at that recently.
So I know the middle school is included on their site, and I added some in the Friday folder prior to when we talked about habitually truant students. But we can definitely give you some updated, for example, like student attendance improvement conferences. Those are required after several, very few, unexcused absences. So we all jotted that down to give you an update on Friday folder, at least to start. For example, I checked on the attendance of one middle school today versus yesterday, just to see if there was a difference. We were at 92.7% yesterday and 92.4% today. So we can capture daily attendance every day.
Thank you so much.
And high school, we can get that same? Good.
I just wanted to clarify for the board and the audience that when we're talking about this education center, I would prefer that we find a cheaper place or use the armory. I am not saying we close it down. I am saying let's look at the alternatives. And then if we save the $187,000, I'm not saying we're saving that money and putting it somewhere. I'd like to see it go for kids and instruction for kids. That is all I'm saying. In terms of maybe I'd be getting some emails about that. And so I'm just saying I needed to clarify. Thank you.
There's one other thing, it just occurred to me. I had the opportunity to work the CASD mini-thon that they did the bingo over the weekend. And they had a lot of people there, and there were a lot of students there, and they had their shirts on, and it was a really good experience. I was working for the community center part of it. But I did want to say I was very impressed because every game was sponsored by CMS government, Chambersburg high school government, this club, that club, everybody. So the student organizations within the school district were making sure that they supported these games, so the payouts, so everything they made that day was pretty much profit, and the donations that they had in raffles. So it's really encouraging to see that kind of volunteering and that kind of community base, to actually see it in action. We don't get to do that a lot as far as the students, at least I don't with my work schedule, to get to some of the stuff they do during the day. But it was really cool to see that, and they made a good bit of money for that, so I was really glad that I got to see that in action. So kudos to all of the different organizations that donated to that bingo so they could give those prizes out to the people that were there.
I want to add one more thing. I was at the basketball tournament at the auxiliary gym for 2 days, and there are new bleachers in there, and it just looks like a brand new gymnasium. I mean, it's awesome, and those bleachers made such a difference. And so we just need to have a date on when the holes in the walls are going to be taken care of, and when I know that date, I can just keep plugging away on how wonderful that gymnasium is, because it took us a while to get those bleachers. It really did as this board, so it was wonderful. Everybody had a seat.
Any other discussion items?
This isn't discussion, but I just wanted to congratulate Mr. Bigger or whoever's responsible for that Monday morning motivator. I looked at the video, and that's a nice way to start the week.
Yeah, we had an award for that, so thank you for pointing that out. Yeah. Bev does most of the heavy lifting on that. I lay out the agenda for those.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, and I think your podcasts are also very inspirational. Okay. Unless anyone has anything else to say, meeting's adjourned. Before 9 o'clock.
You know, I was really planning that we would be doing that